Something strange is happening in America in 2026. The stock market keeps printing new record highs. The number of millionaire households grows every single year. And at the same time, the average American family has never felt poorer. Grocery prices have nearly doubled since 2020. Housing is out of reach for most people under 40. Credit card debt just hit another all-time record. There are now two Americas living side by side, and the gap between them widens every single month. The difference between the two Americas comes down to one thing. One side owns something. The other side trades hours for dollars. The quiet millionaires crossing to the wealthy side are not clever. They are not insiders. They did not pick winners. They bought 3 tickers years ago and never sold them. Those 3 tickers are what this video is about. You will not see them promoted on financial television. You will not see them trending on social media. The Wall Street advisory industry does not want you to know their names, because the moment enough Americans understand what these 3 funds do, the entire business model of paying 1% per year to a financial advisor collapses. These 3 tickers have quietly built more millionaire retirement accounts in the United States than any individual stock on the market. More than Amazon. More than Apple. More than Tesla. More than Nvidia. More than every meme stock that ever trended. And almost nobody under the age of 50 has even heard the names. I am going to walk you through all 3 today. What they are. What sits inside them. The math behind why they work. The true story of the $1 million bet Warren Buffett made in 2007 that exposed Wall Street as a scam for regular people. And by the end of this video, you will understand the exact framework the quiet millionaires have been using to cross to the other side of the divide for 20 years straight. One warning before we dive in. What I am about to show you is going to feel too simple. Your brain is going to resist it. You are going to want to add complexity, chase higher returns, look for something smarter. Do not. The simplicity is the feature. That is exactly why it works, and exactly why Wall Street does not promote it. Let me clear up the confusion first, because the word ETF gets tossed around every day and most people still cannot tell you what one actually is. An ETF is a bundle. That is it. Instead of handing your money to one company and hoping that one company thrives, you hand your money to a bundle, and the bundle holds dozens, hundreds, sometimes thousands of businesses at once. So rather than betting everything on whether one company will keep climbing, you own a sliver of Amazon, plus a sliver of Microsoft, plus a sliver of Walmart, plus a sliver of Coca-Cola, plus a sliver of Nvidia, plus many more, all through one ticker you purchase on your phone. Think of it as owning the whole highway instead of one car. A single car can break down, crash, or rust away in a driveway. The highway keeps carrying traffic either way. Whether Ford wins or Tesla wins, the highway gets used. That is what an ETF does for your portfolio. It takes you out of the car-picking business and puts you into the infrastructure business. And the access is wide open. Every brokerage you already know, whether that is Fidelity, Schwab, Robinhood, or Vanguard, lets you buy these funds exactly the same way you would buy a single stock. They have ticker symbols. You type the symbol, you click buy, you own a share. No paperwork. No accreditation. No minimum balance of $500,000. You, on your phone, can own the same fund a massive state pension is buying with billions. The catch is that most ETFs are mediocre. The industry churns them out by the thousands because the fees add up, and most of them are garbage. Overpriced. Badly structured. Tracking indexes that nobody should care about. The 3 I am about to show you are the ones that have quietly crushed everything else, and they are the ones sitting inside the accounts of almost every quiet millionaire in America right now. Fast disclaimer before we go deeper. This is not financial advice. I am a guy on the internet. You will absolutely lose money in the market at some point in your life. Everybody does. My goal is to give you the framework, the data, and the thinking so you can make your own call. Talk to a professional. Do your own homework. The first ticker is VOO. I own it personally. Have for years. So factor that bias in. VOO gives you the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is the 500 biggest publicly traded businesses in America, packaged into a single index. Every company you recognize is in there. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, JP Morgan, Exxon, Walmart, Visa, Google, Home Depot, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, all of them. You buy one share of VOO and you instantly own a piece of all 500 at once. One click. 500 businesses in your account. When someone on the wealthy side of the divide in 2026 talks about owning America, this is usually what they mean. Not a mansion. Not a portfolio of rental properties. A position in VOO, built over decades, quietly compounding in the background while they live their life. Now I have to tell you the story that changed how millions of Americans think about investing. In 2007, Warren Buffett, the man most people agree is the greatest investor alive, threw down a public challenge. He put $1 million on the table. And he said this. He said he could take a cheap, boring S&P 500 index fund, leave it alone for 10 years, and it would crush any 5 hedge funds a Wall Street pro wanted to pick. A firm named Protégé Partners accepted. They picked 5 hedge funds. These funds were run by elite money managers with Ivy League degrees and decades of experience. They were also charging their clients the infamous 2 and 20 structure. 2% of assets every single year just for showing up, plus 20% of every profit they generated. So if you handed them $1 million and they grew it to $1.1 million, they took 2% off the top whether they performed or not, and then 20% of the gain on top of that. Then the clock started. 10 full years. 2008 financial meltdown. Recovery. Bull market. Volatility spikes. Everything the market could throw at a portfolio hit during that window. The final scoreboard was brutal. Those 5 elite hedge funds averaged about 2.2% per year after fees were pulled out. The boring S&P 500 index fund, the one any random person can buy for pennies, returned about 7.1% per year. Buffett did not win by a little. He flattened them. A retiree with zero financial background, buying VOO and doing absolutely nothing, tripled the return of the smartest rooms on Wall Street. Sit with that. A school bus driver with a brokerage app on her phone beat teams of Harvard and Princeton graduates whose literal paid job was to beat the market. They failed. She won. The data is public. Anyone can look it up. But here's the part almost nobody teaches, and it is the actual secret weapon inside the S&P 500. This index fires its own losers. On autopilot. Let me give you the Sears example, because it is perfect. Back in the 1980s and 90s, Sears was one of the biggest retailers on the planet. Part of the S&P 500 for ages. Then Amazon happened. Then online shopping happened. Then Sears started bleeding. Their stock price fell and fell. At some point, the S&P 500 committee pulled Sears out of the index and swapped in a healthier company to take its spot. If you had been holding Sears stock directly, you rode it straight into the dirt unless you had the instincts to sell in time. But if you held the S&P 500, the index fired Sears for you without you lifting a finger. You never had to notice. You never had to act. You kept climbing while Sears disappeared. This rotation happens relentlessly. When the index was born in the 1950s, 500 companies were in it. Today, only about 50 of those original 500 are still there. Read that again. 50 out of 500. Which means 450 of those original giants have been kicked to the curb over the decades. Some went under. Some got acquired. Some just slowly faded. The index does not mourn them. It swaps them out and keeps the machine humming. You are not on the hook for the research. The index does the firing for you. This is why VOO builds wealth in the background while you live your life. You are not married to any single company. You own the biggest 500 at all times, and when any of them stop being the biggest 500, they are gone from your portfolio without you doing a thing. Ticker number 2 is SCHD. Again, full disclosure, I own it. Have for years. SCHD plays a completely different game than VOO. VOO is built for growth. SCHD is built for income. Cash flow. Payments landing in your account every 90 days whether the headlines are screaming or celebrating. Here's the mechanic. A lot of companies generate massive profits every year. McDonald's, as the easy example, prints billions in net profit annually. When a business is sitting on that kind of cash, leadership has three options. Option 1, they can pour the cash back into the company. Open new restaurants. Redesign stores. Build the app. Buy real estate. Keep growing the empire. Option 2, they can stockpile it. Hold a fortress of cash on the balance sheet so when the next recession hits, they can absorb the pain without borrowing or laying people off. Option 3, and this is where SCHD lives, they can pay the money out to the owners of the company. The owners of a public company are its shareholders. If you own the stock, you are an owner, and the company sends you a piece of the profits. That payment is called a dividend. Decades ago, this was a literal check in the mail. Today, it just lands in your brokerage account electronically. You do not have to file anything. You do not have to call anyone. You simply own the stock and the money shows up. Most dividend companies pay every 3 months, so 4 payments a year, clockwork, whether the market is up or in flames. For the Americans on the wealthy side of the divide, SCHD is often the engine that replaces their paycheck in retirement. They spent 25 or 30 years accumulating shares. The quarterly payments kept growing. By the time they stopped working, the dividend income alone was covering most of their cost of living. They did not rely on Social Security. They did not rely on a pension. They relied on the cash flowing in from a ticker they bought every 2 weeks for half their adult life. This is where regular investors blow themselves up, though. They hunt for the biggest yield number they can find. They see a stock paying 15% and they pile in, thinking they cracked the code. That is a trapdoor. A huge yield usually means the stock price has collapsed, or the business is hemorrhaging, or the dividend is about to be cut to save the company. You buy the stock expecting fat income, and within 6 months the dividend is slashed, the stock keeps falling, and you lose on both ends. Income gone. Principal gone. The actual strategy is the opposite. Buy strong, durable businesses that pay reliable, growing dividends. When a strong business grows, its profits grow. When its profits grow, it hands bigger payments to its shareholders every single year. That means the check you collect next year is larger than this year's. The one after is larger still. That is the exact blueprint of SCHD. It holds about 100 of the strongest dividend-paying companies in America. Not the highest yielders. The strongest. Names like Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Verizon, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Procter & Gamble, Merck, Texas Instruments, Amgen, Abbott. These are not flashy. You will not see any of them trending on social media. That is the point. Look at what is missing from that list. No Nvidia. No Tesla. No hot AI play. That is by design. SCHD is not here to gamble on the next breakthrough. It owns businesses selling soap, soda, gasoline, pills, and phone service. The stuff Americans buy whether the economy is booming or whether layoffs are sweeping the country. That boring stability is precisely why the dividends keep flowing during recessions. SCHD still drops when the market drops. Nothing is crash-proof. But historically it drops less than the broader market, and the quarterly payments keep coming even when the share price is bleeding red. You are being paid to wait out the pain. The entry bar is also strict. To get into SCHD, a company must have paid a growing dividend for at least 10 years in a row. 10 straight years. Miss a year, you are disqualified. Cut the dividend even once, you are out. So what you end up owning is a curated list of the most reliable cash producers in the country. Fund number 3 is QQQ. This is the aggressive one. QQQ tracks the Nasdaq 100. The Nasdaq 100 is the 100 biggest non-financial companies on the Nasdaq exchange. Because it cuts out banks, insurers, and financial firms, what is left is dominated by technology. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, Alphabet, Meta, Tesla, Netflix, Broadcom, and the rest of the giants that have basically steamrolled the last 20 years of economic growth. If VOO is America, and SCHD is cash flow, QQQ is the future. It is a concentrated wager that technology is going to keep pulling the entire economy forward and that the biggest names in tech will keep getting bigger. The returns back that wager up. Over the last 10 years or so, QQQ has averaged around 20% per year. The S&P 500's long-term average is closer to 10%. So QQQ has roughly doubled the market's long-run return over that stretch. That is not a rounding error. Over 20 or 30 years of compounding, that gap is the difference between a comfortable retirement and generational money. That gap is literally what put many of the quiet millionaires on the wealthy side of the divide. But nothing that powerful comes free. The price of those returns is violence. When markets wobble, QQQ does not wobble. It shakes. When the market dips 10%, QQQ can dip 15% or 20%. When the market booms, QQQ launches. The ride is twice as wild in both directions. The scar that still haunts older investors is the dot-com collapse. Between 2000 and 2002, the internet bubble burst. Companies that looked unstoppable vaporized in months. QQQ, tracking the Nasdaq, fell more than 75% from its peak. If you had $100,000 riding on QQQ at the top, you watched it shrink to under $25,000 in less than 2 years. Most people could not sit through that kind of pain. They sold near the bottom, locked in the damage, and swore off the market forever. Here is the part history books leave out. If you held on, if you kept buying as prices fell, if you refused to tap out, QQQ eventually recovered and then kept setting new all-time highs over and over for the next 2 decades. The people who sold at the bottom lost. The people who bought more at the bottom became wealthy. Same exact fund. Opposite outcomes. The only variable was temperament. That is the deal with QQQ. It is not for the squeamish. It is for people who truly believe tech will matter more 10 years from now than it does today. If that belief is not in your bones, you will panic sell during the next crash and learn the lesson the hard way. Step back and look at what you have now. 3 funds. 3 totally different missions. VOO is the entire American economy, broad and self-repairing. SCHD is income, quarterly cash, the strongest dividend payers in the country. QQQ is the tech growth engine, higher reward, higher pain tolerance required. Stack those 3 in a portfolio and you have a weapon that has outperformed almost every active fund manager on Wall Street for 2 decades straight. Owning the right funds is only half the job. The other half is how you buy them. And this is where most people detonate their own portfolios and stay trapped on the wrong side of the wealth divide for their entire lives. The mistake is waiting. People hold their money on the sidelines hoping to catch the perfect bottom. They wait for the federal. They wait for the election results. They wait for the tariff drama to cool off. They wait for the war headlines to fade. They wait for some signal that never arrives, while the market quietly marches higher without them. I have watched this play out for a decade on this channel. March 2020, when the pandemic hit and the fastest crash in history wiped out trillions, I was on video saying buy. Buy on the way down. Keep buying. Keep buying. Comments were vicious. People telling me I was reckless. People telling me this was going to be 2008 again, or worse. Then the Federal Reserve flipped the money printer on, liquidity rushed in, and the fastest crash in history turned into the fastest recovery in history. The people waiting for the all-clear signal missed the entire bottom. 2022 rolled in. The market dropped 20%. Inflation was at a 40-year high. Same story. I kept buying. Comments said I was crazy, recession was guaranteed, the whole thing was collapsing. By 2023, new record highs. The sidelines crowd watched from the bleachers. Then came the tariff chaos of 2025. In February, the first round dropped. Market cracked. Panic everywhere. Days later, tariffs got paused. New highs. In March, round 2, bigger than the first. Another sell-off. Another pause. New highs again. In April, Liberation Day, the biggest sweeping tariffs in modern American history dropped on dozens of countries at once. The fastest sell-off since COVID. People were screaming the end was here. A few days later, the administration softened, and within weeks the market was breaking records again. Every single panic, the same pattern. The people who kept buying won. The people who waited lost. This is why I teach a rule called ABB. Always be buying. Buy when the market is green. Buy when it is red. Buy when it is flat. Buy when the White House is Republican. Buy when it is Democrat. Buy when war is on the front page. Buy when peace is on the front page. The letter that matters is the A. Always. The way you actually live this rule is by automating it. Take the decision out of your own hands. Every major brokerage offers free automatic investing. You pick a day. You pick a dollar amount. You pick the funds. Then you walk away. Every payday, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever fits your paycheck, the money leaves your checking account and lands in your portfolio without you thinking about it. For me, every Wednesday, money automatically flows from checking into my ETF portfolio. Why Wednesday? No reason. I picked it and kept it. The day is meaningless. The consistency is everything. There is exactly one moment you break the automation rule, and it is not when you think. It is not when markets are booming. It is when markets are crashing and every headline says the world is ending. Those are the windows where you manually pile in and buy more than usual. You use the crash as a clearance sale. Because if you are playing the 20 or 30-year game, a 40% drop today is a gift. You are buying the same ownership at a massive discount. Let me bring this back to the divide, because the context in 2026 is what makes all of this urgent. The two Americas I opened this video with are not a metaphor. The data is real. The Federal Reserve's own numbers show that households in the top 10% of wealth now hold a larger share of the country's assets than at any point since the Great Depression. At the same time, household debt outside of mortgages hit a fresh record in early 2026. Auto loans are routinely stretching out to 7 and 8 years just to make the monthly payment survivable. Grocery bills are nearly double what they were in 2020. The typical starter home in most major metros now requires an income most working Americans simply do not have. Meanwhile, the stock market keeps printing new highs, which means the gap between Americans who own assets and Americans who do not is widening every single month. If you own VOO, you are getting wealthier in real time. If you do not own VOO, inflation is quietly eroding your paycheck while someone else collects the gains. That is not political. That is arithmetic. This is exactly why these three funds matter more in 2026 than they did in any prior decade. Because the machine is pulling away from the people who only trade their hours for dollars. The only way to cross to the other side of the divide is to own a piece of the machine itself. You do not need a finance degree. You do not need a big income. You do not need to be clever. You need 3 tickers, an automatic buying schedule, and the stomach to ignore the headlines when they get apocalyptic. The headlines will get apocalyptic. In the next 10 years, there will be at least one more crash, probably 2. There will be more political chaos, more banking scares, more conflicts, more moments where every expert tells you to run for the exits. The people who tune that noise out and keep buying are the ones who end up on the wealthy side of the divide. The people who listen to the panic stay stuck where they started. Here is something the financial media refuses to cover. The real success stories in American investing are not the day traders, not the crypto speculators, not the options gamblers on TikTok, not the house flippers. The real success stories are the postal workers, the nurses, the mechanics, the school principals, and the small business owners who dumped money into a boring fund 25 years ago and just kept doing it through every panic, every recession, every president, every war, without ever selling a share. Fidelity has released this data publicly more than once. One of the most consistent findings across their top-performing accounts is that the owners had forgotten their passwords. Literally. The best-performing accounts belonged to people who had stopped logging in for years at a time. Because they never panic sold, never market timed, never overtraded. They just let the engine run. That is what a quiet millionaire looks like. No yacht. No Lamborghini. No hedge fund. Just a person who started young, automated the buying, tuned out the noise, and let compounding do what compounding does. And the math is embarrassingly straightforward. If you can commit just $500 a month into a low-cost S&P 500 fund, starting at age 25, and leave it alone for 40 years at the long-run historical average, you cross the $1 million line before retirement. Not because you picked winners. Not because you got lucky. Just because you stayed boring and consistent. 3 letters. VOO. $500 a month is a lot for a lot of people, I know. But even $100 a month, started early and protected from your own panic instincts, turns into real wealth over a lifetime. The amount is less important than the habit. So let us land the plane. 3 tickers. VOO for broad American ownership. SCHD for compounding quarterly income. QQQ for aggressive tech growth. Some combination of those 3, size to your age and your stomach, is the entire playbook for the vast majority of regular investors. You do not need 40 ETFs. You do not need 80 stock picks. You do not need a financial advisor charging you 1% a year for the next 30 years. You need 3 tickers, automation, and the discipline to never panic sell. If you are young, lean heavier on VOO and QQQ. You have decades to absorb volatility. If you are close to retirement, shift toward SCHD and VOO for stability and cash flow. If you are in the middle, blend whatever fits. The proportions change. The principles do not. Always be buying. Automate it. Never sell in a panic. Use crashes as accelerators. Do this for 20 or 30 years and the compounding handles the rest. The Americans crossing to the wealthy side of the divide in 2026 are not the ones you see on YouTube flexing rented Lamborghinis. They are the ones you have never heard of, boring and consistent, owning pieces of the system while everyone else argues about the next hot stock. If this video gave you something useful, the biggest thank you can give back is to send it to somebody. A family member. A friend. A coworker who has been staring at their bank account lately wondering why they cannot seem to get ahead. Because this knowledge should be taught in every public school in America. It is not. So it falls to us to pass it along, one person at a time.